Hi, darling. How are you?
1 second. Not sure if you can hear me.
I can hear and see you.
Hmm. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Because I had my connected.
So, how are
Yes.
you? How are you doing? How are the kids?
They're good. They're in the Bahamas actually, with my mother and their father while I study for the exam, the bar exam.
Oh,
And yeah.
but you're okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. Staying indoors. The numbers in Florida are high. So I'm trying to stay indoors.
Excellent. So, we start this by you telling us your name and telling us anything about you that you want us to know, so we can get to know you a little bit better. Of course, I know you, but I mean, for whoever may see this.
Watching. Yeah. So my name is Chavaz. Last name is Cesar. I am a Bahamian. So I'm from the Bahamas, Nassau, Bahamas, born and raised. And I recently lived in Durham, North Carolina, for the past, I would say, 2 years as a grad student at Duke University at the law school. Prior to that, I did law school in the Bahamas, undergrad as well. And my potential area of practice, because I'm still studying for the bar exam, is actually social justice issues, a bit of diversity, um, inclusion stuff. I haven't quite figured out exactly what I wanted to do as yet, but definitely social justice work.
Okay. And can you tell me why did you choose Duke to come to get your LLM? Why not some other school or in the Bahamas or even closer to home?
Mm. So I sent out applications to about 5 schools.
Mhm.
My decision for Duke came down to I looked at the rankings and the ratings of the program,
Mhm.
where Duke overall, as the law school, was on the T14 list
Mhm.
for that LLM program.
Mhm.
Um, I chose Duke because I wanted an international experience. I've never done college outside of my home country.
Mhm.
And I had a childhood friend that went to Duke years ago for undergrad, and I always knew it to be a prestigious school.
Mhm.
And in my country, education is very important, and where you're educated is important.
Mhm.
Most Bahamians receive formal education abroad as a part of either high school, college, graduate, postgraduate, and I just wanted to add that to my resume.
How is the education system in the Bahamas? I mean, is the reason why you receive of the Bahamas education is because you want to just expand the knowledge that you gain in Bahamas, or is it just that the system may be missing something or lacking something?
So the culture of the Bahamas is hinged on, I guess, so education is important. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Because of the colonial history, and during the colonial era, the educators were not Bahamian. We had educators from Europe.
Right.
So the education system is is molded after a European education system. So we are used to being taught by persons from all around the world. And you have international schools in the country as well. Um, it's just a part of the culture to go off to school, either go to boarding school, go to university. It's just a part of the culture. The system is lacking like anywhere else because you do have public and private schools. The public schools obviously lacking in areas that you would not find. Private schools are lacking, but the private schools are very, very prestigious,
Yeah.
very costly.
Mhm.
Um, so it's either a choice of being schooled at home, at an international school, or going abroad. not so much the public school system.
I've been to the Bahamas twice, I think, once on a cruise and once, I don't know how we got there the other time, but to the Bahamas twice in my life. And everything I saw was exceptionally beautiful.
Yeah.
And on my last trip, we had walked down to the market where people make bags and things, the kind of little touristy place. I got to know one of the ladies. She was sitting there weaving a bag while I was sitting there. And she said, I would like to invite you and your husband to come and join us for dinner. And I thought we were going to go to a restaurant, but she actually invited us to her house. So we went to her house. And what you see as a tourist is not really what the Bahamas looks like, because the things that they want tourists to see is beautiful and, everybody's doing well and all that stuff. And what was really amazing about this woman is the next day we went out there, I had bought a couple of bags from her for gifts for people. And you'd see white people come up to her and try to talk her down her price. And she did. She would do just to make the sale.
Yeah.
And I asked her why. She said, because I have to live, I have to feed my family, I have to survive. So every penny helps.
So I grew up in that market. My mother, my grandmother, I actually had a booth out there as well. Well, I still do. So it's survival.
Right, it's survival. And so, okay, now you're in the United States, and I'm assuming you came straight to Duke to the United States, or did you go anywhere first?
No, so Duke was my first form of education in the U.S. So that would have been grad school for my master's in law. But prior to that, being so close to the U.S., Florida in particular, we would vacation, family, always back and forth to the U.S. But that was my first time in North Carolina. So it was a different experience from what I'm used to, as far as the busy city life of South Florida or maybe in New York. I wouldn't say it was a culture shock for me. It was a culture shock for my children.
Yeah.
But because they were used to Florida or maybe a busier city, New York or LA, but coming to North Carolina, it wasn't so much country, but it was relaxing in some ways because Durham was not as busy as I expected it or thought it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you get to Duke and you enroll in the LLM program. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the program.
What is an LLM program?
So as a non-American who would have completed their foundational legal education outside of the United States, so my colleagues and I, we would have already had our degree in law, the equivalent to the JD, which in countries outside of the US, mostly countries based on the English common law, we would have a Bachelor of Laws, which is an LLB. That degree you can only have before having an undergraduate 4-year degree, so just like a JD. So coming to Duke, I entered the Masters of Law program. That program was only for international students. So my colleagues and I were all non-American, either recently graduates of an LLB program, or they would have already been attorneys in their home countries or even judges or just working in the legal field, but we all had a legal background.
Right.
And the purpose of the LLM for persons like myself, it was an entryway, well, particularly persons maybe from civil law countries. I think that's like anyone from France or some students. I think there's someone from Turkey. They would need the LLM to sit a state bar. Someone like myself or someone who studied English common law, either in the UK or somewhere in the Commonwealth Caribbean with an LLB, the LLM was just an introduction to the US law like it would be for others, but it was not what we needed to sit a bar exam. But
right.
It was something to get your feet wet on American law. Just having a different experience, gaining a different line on your CV and a pathway to sit the bar exam.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, so now you're at Duke and you're taking this degree. What kind of students were in your program? How many? And what was your program like?
I think my cohort consisted of about either just under or just over 100 students. We ranged, I think we were maybe some 90 some languages, 50 plus countries, all legal professionals or legal students. And our program, I immediately realized that the program and the students in the program, we were different from the students in the JD program. The classes, we registered after the JDs for classes. We had to take certain classes, of course, entry level, like maybe legal research and writing, those things were standard. But certain classes were not offered to us as LLMs. Certain, I think there's an entrepreneurship LLM that was not offered to us as well. But we were able to specialize, well, not even specialize, but get a certificate in, I think, like maybe business, or it was maybe 2 or 3 different options. I did not look into that option because my main focus was I wanted to take foundational law courses to sit the bar exam, or 1 or 2. But my main goal was I wanted to do the SJD or maybe a PhD afterwards, and I wanted to take classes in civil rights or social justice or legal history, that sort of thing. But I quickly realized that those were not widely offered.
Right. So the courses that you were able to take, though, were successful enough that you could then sit for the bar.
Well, so coming into the program, one of the things I made clear was my ideal or my goal, I want to sit the New York bar exam after learning that I would be prepared for the bar exam. You know, the LLM would prepare me for the bar exam. So in speaking with admissions and so forth, I was made known that, you know, I may have a challenge. But in reading the rules of the particular state that I wanted to take, it was made known to me only maybe months later that there were other options. There were maybe 4 other jurisdictions that I was prepared for in my class selection. So coming into Duke in August, we had to bring with us all of our paperwork for the bar exam as foreign trained law students or foreign trained attorneys, because the deadline would have been October of the fall to submit, because the jurisdiction would need about 6 months to process and I guess comb through all of our credentials. So what I found out later on, which I had wished that I had known prior, was that there were about 4 other jurisdictions that did not have the restrictions that New York had, and would have been a straight shot for me to take as a foreign trained law student, currently sitting an LLM degree.
Right.
Yeah.
And so why weren't you made aware of that? What was the thing that kept you from knowing that?
So coming into the program, we were sold on the New York bar exam. And the New York bar exam is one of the popular bars, of course, because it is widely received around the world, especially in countries like the Bahamas and Latin American countries as well. The New York bar is most favored. But the bar exam that New York's exam, New York is one of the jurisdictions that is a part of the uniform bar exam. And like I mentioned prior, there are about 4 other jurisdictions that have the same exam, but with less restrictions. But what I realized, and this is only my personal opinion, I think the law school's preference is to sell New York because if you have the majority of
That's
your
the
students,
first
at
thing
least
said.
90%,
Uh-huh.
sitting in New York, you're able to then have alumnus in big law in New York. So it works to the law school's benefit, obviously, to have students in New York at the big law firms making top dollar versus filtering them out to smaller jurisdictions, maybe like a Wisconsin or a Vermont or a Washington state. So that was my observation. It was beneficial to the law school to sell you on New York. And that's just what they did.
And so once you were sold on New York, what did that mean to you though? So what did that mean?
So what it does, the majority of the students, well, JDs, I would say, they end up in big law firms in New York.
Yeah.
The students that are interested in big law and not public interest students. So you would register for the exam like everyone else did. But however, my issue came in April of the spring, the second and final semester of the program, when I got a communication from the New York bar saying that I was not qualified to sit the bar exam. And with that, I immediately reached out to the dean, one of the deans in the international program, can't remember the exact title, but this is what I'm faced with. And, how can we resolve this? The day prior to receiving that communication, there was a meeting on campus at the law school for the LLMs where we would complete a handwriting sample and fill out some paperwork for the exam. In that meeting, it was like a talk. There was a lady that spoke to us who was very well versed in the admissions process and application process for jurisdictions and their bar exams. And she made it known to us that she sat maybe about 5 bar exams, challenged maybe 4, and was successful. So she asked, why are so many of you sitting in New York? And I spoke to her in particular, and I said to her, this is what was placed before us. So this is what we registered for. And she said, there are about 4 other jurisdictions that you can sit without issue. And she said, LLMs have sat them in the past. And, most international students sit these other jurisdictions. So I received the communication from New York with the unfavorable response the next day to my application. So I immediately reached out to her, the lady that I met at the meeting the day prior, and I told her what was the issue. The communication read that, the rule for New York reads that if you are a foreign trained law student, this is your entryway. You should have a common law degree, an English common law degree that meets the durational requirements of a JD, which is 3 years, which my degree did. It has to meet the substantive requirement of a JD, which is the English common law, which my degree did. So on those grounds, I had already qualified to sit the exam. However, if you are deficient in any of those two areas, you would need the LLM to cure the deficiency,
Mm-hmm.
as well as, I want to say, maybe 12 or 13 bar specific credits, and they give you a list of classes that you're able to take, which are usually 1L foundational courses, which I had more than enough of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I met the requirements. So it was unclear to me why I was not determined to qualify to sit the exam. So in speaking with the young lady that I met the day prior, I told her I read it to her and I sent her a copy of it. And she said to me, "Oh, well, the law school, certain persons at the law school in higher administrative offices can have this issue resolved, because it's obviously a misunderstanding."
Mm-hmm.
And so right then, she and I sat on the phone for about an hour, I on my laptop, she on hers, searching jurisdictions that would accept foreign trained law students.
Mm-hmm.
At that moment, there were about four others, which are Washington State, Vermont, Wisconsin, and there's another one I don't remember, but I know in total, inclusive of New York, there's five.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I reached out to one of the administrators in the international program. This is what I just received from New York. What is the next step? How do I move forward? And I got a response with a redacted petition to the New York Supreme Court saying that, I got that from the administrator in the international program, saying that you're going to have to file a petition. Here's a redacted one. Get started on what you're going to be doing as a lawyer. And that was it. And this was maybe a week before finals and graduation. The young lady who I spoke with on the phone she is stopped at the law school. Don't know if she still is. She and I, like I said, were on the phone, and she was more than willing to assist. She had already given me insight and information that I did not know existed. And had I known that I had four other choices, four other jurisdictions, I would not have had the issue I had with New York. I would have applied to the other jurisdictions, simultaneously applying for New York. And if I even were to get the same unfavorable response from New York, I would have still had applications to how many other jurisdictions that I would have been accepted to sit on the first submission without an appeal or without, filing a petition.
Why do you
So
think it is that you weren't told about those other jurisdictions? Do you think it was intentional or just a slip of information somebody wasn't doing their job? I mean, why do you think?
I feel that we were not given the options simply because, just like with other things at Duke, the resources are there, but as international students, they weren't afforded to us. We didn't know they existed. If it was not for, I know in my personal experience, I know being a part of BALSA, the Black Law Student Association,
Mm-hmm.
that afforded me opportunities that made my experience at Duke, it 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 outweighed the negatives like this. Because as a JD, the law school was originally for JDs. The LLM programs were only an extension. So maybe like a sprinkle on the ice cream. We are not afforded certain opportunities. Certain resources, like I said, on-campus interviews for jobs.
Yeah.
We had our on-campus interviews maybe in spring. I think maybe midway around spring break, when JDs were having interviews from the beginning of fall.
Yeah.
So it's just, I want to say it's intentional. And there are a few other persons that have experienced similar things, but I can only speak for me.
Yeah.
But they were just, for lack of a better word, not offered to us certain resources. Why, I do not know. But it puzzles me to know that in retrospect, you know, after dealing with the emotions of I'm graduating in May, the bar exam is supposed to be in July, and I found out a few days before the deadline of April 30th that I can't sit the exam.
Wow.
And at that point, as an international student, it requires your application. An application like mine would require 6 months. Um, 6 months I would have required. I needed to apply 6 months prior to the actual exam. So at that point, I could not register for any exam, and I could not sit any bar exam in July because I had already missed the application window.
Yeah.
Which then meant for me, I would not have. I did have a job offer because I worked with, through Balsa, I was able, and through yourself, I was able to secure a very good externship in the spring at the North Carolina State Court of Appeals. So that position afforded me a full-time job post-graduation. Fortunately, that job did not require me to be licensed and barred as a clerk. However, I could have sat the exam in July, which were my intentions, but due to lack of information and lack of resources being afforded to us, I was not able to sit the exam in July.
Wow. And so for the JD class at Duke of 2019, they all graduated in May and sat for the bar, you know,
July.
in July. That was not afforded to you.
No. And, you know,
And are you unique in that, or were there other LLMs who that had this happen to?
There were other LLMs who just simply did not apply because of the possibility of not qualifying to sit in New York. They would have sat had they known that there were other options. Because if you are from a civil law country, you would have to, you needed the JD. I mean, sorry, you needed the LLM, and you needed certain certain classes that were restricted to a particular amount of credits and content, 1L courses. Some persons just opted not to sit the exam, period.
Yeah.
And just missed the opportunity.
Yeah.
But, you know, in expressing what I went through with my Balsa family, everything, the response always was, administration can help with this.
Yep.
Administration can help with this. And even in speaking to the lady at Duke on staff who I met in the meeting, she said to me, you know, this is a simple fix. You know, I can speak to your dean, and your dean can make a call and we can resolve this issue. And surprisingly, I think maybe about 10 minutes later, I got an email from that same young lady saying to me that she was instructed not to offer any more assistance to me because the international program is for LLM and the persons in the international office should be the ones to assist with anything that I may have a challenge with. The person that she referred me to, I had already communicated to them about my response, about the communication that I received from New York. And I never ever got anything. I didn't get a reply until maybe about 2 to 3 days later from that dean. But the dean who was subordinate to the dean that she spoke to, who she said, instructed her not to assist me, didn't respond. And I expressed the urgency, that the window is closing. I'd like to get some help. What do I do? Is there anything you can do? And the only assistance that I got was a redacted petition from a former student. And the superior dean said to me that her subordinate dean, she's instructed him to take vacation. He should not be working. And basically, that's why you're not getting a response.
That's
I was
terrible.
blown away. I was completely blown away, because my thing was, this is my professional career. This
Right.
is my life, I only have a certain time frame to get this done. Deadlines have to be met. And the international program is, at that time, maybe it was that office, maybe about 5 persons.
Mm-hmm.
So we did not have the support, faculty, well, maybe like support staff, faculty wise, in the administrative offices like the JDs did. But the resources that JDs had, in that same light, the additional resources were not offered to us. It was like we were shut off to that little hallway in the international office, and those were our only resources, when JDs had the entire law school and all of the faculty. And anytime we sought assistance from the additional faculty or administrative members, it was sometimes even told, that resource is not for you, that's for JDs, which is what was told to me. After this young lady reached out to help me, which she thought was the right thing to do, which I think is the right thing to do. If I'm a Duke Law student, you're on staff at Duke, but there's a line that says LLM, JD, and we don't cross it.
Yeah. That's terrible to hear, Chavaz. And I will tell you, I know most of this. I know most of your story, and I know many of the other Black and brown LLMs had a similar experience for various reasons. And I think some of the judges and people I've connected you to tried to help, but literally
Sure
they have their hands tied, so there was not very much they could do. But one, was the education in Duke a good education? Did you learn a lot? Did you gain the knowledge that you needed to sit for the bar, even though you did not?
So, the program is so short. I did do, I think, maybe 2 or 3 1L courses.
Mm-hmm.
I would say overall the quality of education is superb. The highlight of my time at Duke came in the spring semester, when I was able to do the courses that I really wanted to do, which were critical race theory. I did that with Professor Trina Jones. And then I did a civil rights course, a history of the civil rights movement, with Professor Lovelace, who was then a visiting professor, and now he's on staff at Duke. So that for me was, at the time, Professor Jones, if I can remember correctly, was the only Black professor on staff at Duke, at the law school. If I'm not mistaken, I stand to be corrected. Oh, sorry. And yes, and I also did in the fall with Professor Miller, Civ Pro, and I had another course with him in the spring. So and also,
G. Charles. G. Charles is a black
yes,
faculty at the Duke.
yes,
I think
he was out that year. I think was he at Harvard that year?
he was at Harvard that year.
Yes, and
Crystal Grant, she worked in the clinics. I don't know where, what. And there's one other person who came,
torts with
Dorian Cole.
right. I did torts with her.
Yeah.
She was amazing. You know, classes with John, with Lovelace and Miller, they were the highlight of my time at Duke, especially my critical race theory class with Professor Jones, my history of the civil rights with Professor Lovelace, who was so, him and Miller, so encouraging and motivating throughout my time, because I expressed to them my interest and desire to go into academia, as well as Professor Glimpf, Valia Glimpf,
Yeah.
which she introduced you and I. She was my post-grad mentor. So I would say, well, one thing I did notice, um, the diversity ratio at Duke is lacking. I think the 1L courses are very huge.
Right.
So that would be, I think I made in torts with Professor Coleman, I made the third Black female,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one Black male. And in Civ Pro with Miller, I made the second Black female, and we had two Black males. So I noticed that in every section, there may be 4 or 5, if 5 being a lot, because in each of those sections, which were one was a large section and one was a small section, maybe 3 to 4 Black students.
Yeah. Do you think that this was because of race that you had those experiences at Duke, or do you think it was because the people weren't prepared to deal with the kind of issues that LLMs may experience?
I think it's a bit of both, because at one point I had a meeting with one of the deans, and I'm sure you're aware of this because I'm sure I shared it with you. There was an issue with the scheduling of the meeting. She set a time that I agreed to. Her secretary changed it, and I didn't know it was changed, but I didn't agree to the change. So at the time of the meeting, she called me to say, she sent an email, this particular day, I'm expecting you in my office. Why aren't you here? And I referred to my calendar, and I just went to the office. And when I got in the office, I gave pleasantries and said to her, the time, this wasn't the agreed time. And the response was, she spun the face of her computer around, and she said, "This is what I'm dealing with today. Just come in and have a seat." She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge that the time that present moment was the incorrect time for the meeting. And she didn't apologize for getting it wrong, and maybe if it had inconvenienced me in any way. I sat down for the meeting, and she said to me, in America, here in America, we communicate by email. And it was offensive to me because in America, around the world, that's how professionals communicate. It was, I don't know how you communicate in the Bahamas, but, in America, we communicate by email. And I wanted to say to her, but I kept and remained very calm and professional because I saw what was happening. And it would not have gone nice if I had responded, and correct her right there in her tracks, but I allowed her to go on. So I thought that right there was a bit discriminatory, to make a statement like that,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not from America. I am from a predominantly Black country. That's what you say,
Yeah.
And it was many little things like that that I experienced that for me, it was new to me because I'm from a predominantly Black country. So racism, I would not say that it does not exist, because we do have a Caucasian minority, and we did have racial indifference some years ago, but the Black and white issue is not as prevalent as it is in America. And it was my first time experiencing it in the way that I did,
Yeah.
you know,
So,
um, and sometimes very subtle, sometimes very blatant, but it was insinuated so many times.
yeah. So, okay. So we've struggled a little bit being at Duke with the LLM program and all that stuff. Why? Well, let me ask you a different. What bar were you able to sit for?
So I sat Washington State, and with that, um, I was able to successfully sit in February of this year. However, I was unsuccessful. I'm resitting in July, um, but the classes I took in preparation for the bar and everything that I did would have qualified me to sit that exam without issue, if I had known that that option was available to me when I came into Duke.
Yeah. And
And it's
so,
the same exam as New York.
what's your overall impression of Duke as a whole? What were your good and bad takeaways of the university?
Um, for me, it was just a different experience. The university that I attended at home was maybe only a fraction of Duke. So the resources, having affinity groups like Balsa that I keep referring to, um, and the networking options through Balsa, I took full advantage of those. Absolute advantage. The talks that we had at lunch, the lunch talks, professional talks, you would have persons from across the legal profession, near and far, international and local. Um, it was resources like those, I think, made Duke different from any other options that I may have had, or just added to my experience at Duke.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
well, I'm at least glad to hear that. And so, I do not remember when, but I knew you had sent me a dramatic email, I think sometime last year, I don't remember when, saying that you had to leave the country. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Um, because it's pending, I don't want to in detail,
Okay.
but what I can say is, um, there is a, what does Duke refer to it? Visa services.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? An application was submitted short of a few pages, and with that being done, it placed my application in a critical place. And in my opinion, and in speaking with other persons, when I reached out to a few of my contacts, um, and even just speaking with some of the JDs, it was, this is an issue that Duke can resolve. And coming down to the wire, again, there was information that could have been afforded to me that was not afforded to me, that would have made um, the process go a lot smoother. It would have given me more options. Um, as, for example, A colleague of mine graduated with me at Duke. We check on each other from time to time. And he remained in the US. And, with COVID and the uncertainty of being to leave, would he be able to leave? Would he be able to go home? Would his country even accept him coming from the US? And I suggested to him, there's an option. I'm telling you what the option is. Go to Visa Services and tell them that this is what you need assistance with. And they told him that the option was not available. And it was the same option that if I had known of, I would not have had the challenges that I had. Mm-hmm. And, that particular student as well was offered a job from a private organization in Durham. And it was an internship in the spring. Mm-hmm. And he took it to the dean. He took the paperwork to the dean, one of the deans in the international program. And he was denied the opportunity to complete this internship. And I didn't find out about it until after the deadline for the externship program that Duke offers, which we thankfully were able to be a part of as international students. And I said to my colleague, there's an externship program that you can be a part of with this job offer, with this internship offer. It would just be an externship and not an internship, and you will not be able to be paid, but you will get class credit, once it's approved. But that option was not offered to him when that option was on the table. Mm-hmm. So an innovative, bright mind with so much potential, yet again, another Black student, he lost an opportunity and was not made to know that, these are your options and you can't do this, but this is what you can do. Yeah. So, it was instances like that I just feel we were not afforded. Yeah. Resources not made available.
So did Duke leave a good taste or a bad taste in your mouth? I mean, would you do it again?
I cannot recommend Duke's LLM, international LLM program. My ideal, I'll backtrack a bit. Because I planned in extreme detail, before coming to Duke while at Duke. Yeah. And if Duke had given me the experience that I expected, or just even felt, even if it fell a little short, my ideal and my plan was to create a pipeline for students like myself, because I was the first Bahamian student to attend Duke Law.
Right.
So my ideal was to have another student come the following year in my place, like I did. However, regrettably, I cannot. I can advise or assist, persons in, probably selecting LLM programs, and you choose. But to answer your question, I cannot recommend the international program that I completed at Duke Law.
Wow, that's pretty powerful, Chavaz. That's pretty powerful. And what are you doing now?
So I'm studying for the bar. Mm-hmm. But I was at home for a while working in my family's business. We have a firm in the Bahamas. So right now I'm just taking a break, removed from everyone and everything, and studying for the bar exam. Yeah. No work, no children, just the books.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you have about 2 minutes, so I'm gonna leave this to you to say anything you wish to say.
Well, I would like to say thank you for giving me a voice and a platform, as well as, during my time at Duke, you made your house and your family open to not only myself and my family, but to, and not only Balsa students, but to everyone, any friends that we may have had, to you and Skip, thank you, and the children, thank you for just being there for us. Every resource that you had, you made available to us. I mean, I can pick up the phone and call federal judges because of you. Um, the Justice Beasley, I went to a function and she knew who I was. So it's experiences like that that I came to Duke for,
Yeah.
So even some of the Balsa students, Melanie Walker, she sat with me in the library, and I'm getting so emotional. And she went through my cover letter. And it's so funny because she said, I sat with the international program, and the way they helped me write my cover letter, she was like, no. Mm-hmm. And after she helped me write, she was working with Justice Beasley at the time. And, she put in a good word, and I didn't get in with Justice Beasley. She wanted to hire me, but she was already full. So I worked with Judge Bryant. And Judge Bryant, to this day, I can pick up the phone, call her clerk. And, so those were the things that I took away from Duke and that I value. Lifelong experiences, partners at firms in New York, DC, all around the world, and they're all my Balsa family. So
I'm very glad to hear that. That's
mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you a little secret. I got Melanie the internship with Chief Justice Beasley. She's a very close family friend, and I think you met Judge Webster,
Webster, Gregory,
so many of them.
all of them.
You got to spend time with them, and I'm very glad about that. And that's part of the reason why our home is always open. You can always come here, and we'll make sure there are people here who can advise and give insight. So I'm really glad of that. And I'm really proud that your daughters like my food, which made me feel.
Oh yeah, she loves Rochelle's ham.
Yeah, absolutely.
She
So
loves Rochelle's ham. Yep. So those were the heartwarming things that kept me going, and just smoothed over all of the speed bumps that I may have had, during my experience at Duke. So I'm here to help if there's anyone coming in that needs some insight, because there are ways to do things. You just have to know people.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that is the key, is having a network of people who will speak up for you. And I'm glad I was able to, although I wasn't able to bring the resolution you wanted. My voice is always there, always. So thank you so much, darling. I will see you again soon.
Thank you. You must stay in touch.
Yes, absolutely, we must. And please let me know before you go home.
Yes. I'll come up there before I leave. I'll come up there before I leave. All right. Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you, darling.
You too.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.